The Los Angeles Dodgers, who of course did not get to where they wanted to be this postseason. They were knocked out ignominiously by the Arizona Diamondbacks, and now they are in quite a pickle. They're in quite a pickle because one of their top starting pitchers from last year, Julio Urias, is a free agent and besides likely to be suspended for a domestic violence allegation. And then Clayton Kershaw, also a free agent, and of course announced this week that he underwent shoulder surgery. So let's look at what the Dodgers are left with in their rotation, because that's where I want to start. I'll get to Ohtani, but let's start with the rotation. The current rotation: Walker Buehler, Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepiot, Emmett Sheehan, and Gavin Stone. That would be my best guess. Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin are recovering from surgeries, and as I mentioned, Kershaw and Urias are unsigned. So a lot of Dodgers fans and other fans are saying, whoa, wait, how can the Dodgers go get Ohtani when they need all this pitching? I would say they need Ohtani and they need the starting pitching, both. And I wrote recently about Ohtani for the Dodgers and why it makes so much sense. And my feeling is they need a little bit more sizzle now. Their fans are frustrated, understandably, with the fact that they've only won one World Series in the Andrew Friedman era and in the shortened season. And it's kind of going to be the same thing all over again next year. Now, granted, these are rich people problems. You have Freddie Freeman, you have Mookie Betts, you have Max Muncy, who just signed an extension. You have all these good players, but you haven't really kind of captivated your fans, or at least given them another reason to watch your team next season. The Dodgers will draw either way. They'll draw big without Ohtani. But if they have Ohtani, it makes things that much more interesting. So I would say for the Dodgers, Ohtani is a priority. Two starting pitchers as well is a priority. All right, moving on here. Another team that badly is in need of starting pitching, a team that just hired a new head of baseball operations. I'm talking about the Boston Red Sox. Here's a team that obviously was disappointed in its performance last year, given that they fired their chief baseball officer, Chaim Bloom. And now let's take a look at their rotation and why they are in need of starting pitching as well. It starts with Chris Sale. Okay, Chris Sale hopefully will stay healthy. Brian Bayo showed a lot of promise last year. Nick Pivetta, Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck. And they've got some other needs as well: a right-handed bat, an outfielder, a second baseman. But the Red Sox, what they want to fix, what they want to address first and foremost is their pitching. And they were a team that wanted to get Nathan Eovaldi last offseason. Didn't happen. He ends up in Texas. You saw what happened in the postseason. So I'm interested to see how the Red Sox go about this. We've heard talk that they too will be in the Ohtani sweepstakes, and I believe that. The only problem I have envisioning Ohtani in Boston is he's a guy who likes his privacy. It's a guy who likes his privacy in that fishbowl. I'm not feeling it. All right, let's keep moving on here. The Cardinals are another team, yet another team, in dramatic need of starting pitching. They need not just one, not just two, but three starters at least, because right now, let's look at their rotation. It is basically in tatters. They have Miles Mikolas at the top with Steven Matz, Zach Thompson, Dakota Hudson, Drew Rom, who had like an 8 ERA after coming over in the Jack Flaherty trade. So you see their needs right there. Starting pitcher, and starting pitcher. The Cardinals have been vocal about this. They've said quite openly that they plan to address their rotation, and in a big way. Could come through a trade, could come through free agency. Probably most likely will come through free agency. The question with the trade and the Cardinals is, will they be willing to give up, say, a Nolan Gorman in a trade? They're willing to give up Dylan Carlson. We know that. And Cardinal fans dreaming of some kind of Dylan Carlson package for a top starter, I don't see that happening. You've got to give up one of your guys that actually is drawing more interest from teams. So, with those three teams and the needs that they have, let's look at the starting pitchers who are available in free agency, the top guys, and you can see that it's a pretty deep group. It's not bad. Blake Snell, likely National League Cy Young winner. Aaron Nola, who has excelled for the Phillies for quite some time. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the 25-year-old Japanese sensation. Sonny Gray, he's a guy that's been linked to the Cardinals. Jordan Montgomery, a guy who's been linked to the Cardinals. Eduardo Rodriguez opted out of his deal with the Tigers. Marcus Stroman opted out of his deal with the Cubs. And Shota Imanaga, another top Japanese pitcher. Obviously, these guys are going to be in high demand because, as one agent told me yesterday, He has identified 6 teams, and we just named 3 of them, who need at least 2 starting pitchers. 6 teams. And of course, then there are the rest of the clubs that need starting pitching as well. All right, moving on to teams 4 and 5. These are teams that don't necessarily need starting pitching, but certainly are going to be fun to watch or interesting to watch anyway. The Yankees. The New York Yankees. The team that keeps promising changes and new things and all kinds of improvements. Well, what exactly are they going to do? Their needs, quite obviously, as you'll see here, are in the outfield. Giancarlo Stanton likely is not going to play much outfield next year. Harrison Bader is gone. Aaron Hicks is gone. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is gone. Right now, if you had to put an outfield on the field, it would be Aaron Judge, Estevan Florial, and Jake Bauers, most likely. So the Yankees need outfielders. They need left-handed hitting outfielders. Cody Bellinger is an obvious free agent target. Juan Soto is an obvious trade target. The Yankees, too, have a disenchanted fan base. It's a different kind of disenchantment than the Dodgers. The Dodgers keep winning. They just don't win in the playoffs. The Yankees didn't make the playoffs, haven't been to the World Series since 2009 when they won it, and people are wanting to see a new way here, some kind of different outlook with the Yankees. Obviously, left-handed hitting should be at a premium. We know that. Starting pitching, too, maybe one more, maybe some extra help in the bullpen, always a wise thing to do for a team. But the Yankees are definitely a team to watch, seemingly a team that is intent on doing some things differently, though we have yet to see any evidence of any significant changes in their front office or in the way they operate. All right, finally, the Houston Astros. Now, the Astros, of course, 7 straight appearances in the ALCS, amazing run that they've had here. But as I said on our final ALCS broadcast, right before they were eliminated, they are at an interesting crossroads. And they're at an interesting crossroads because some guys are coming up on free agency, some pretty big names. Let's take a look at this now. 2 guys who are up for free agency after this season. Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman, free after 2024. Free after 2025, Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez. Now, both Altuve and Bregman are represented by Scott Boras. Scott Boras generally likes to take his clients to the open market, though he didn't with Altuve the last time. Altuve did sign an extension. So it's not going to be easy necessarily to get those guys done. Maybe Altuve, I would think less so on Bregman. Framber Valdez, certainly he's up in a couple of years. It's a little bit different. Kyle Tucker the same, and Kyle Tucker had a miserable playoff. But Kyle Tucker has been a huge part of what they do and what they have done these past several years. So there has been talk of an extension. We'll see what the Astros end up doing. Of course, they need a manager right now. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the Astros, again, they may come back with similar players next year, the same kind of team. Those guys are all under contract or under control for next season. But at some point, they're going to have to face all of these situations contractually that are coming up. All right, 4 other teams I want to mention here. 4 teams that, yes, could have made my top 5 quite easily. I'm talking about the Padres, first of all. The Padres, you might have read our report, Evan Drellick, Dennis Lynn, and I, last week, about how they took out a $50 million loan toward the end of last season to beat payroll, and how they are cutting payroll. They plan to cut payroll. You saw over the weekend, they did not pick up the options on Michael Wacha and Nick Martinez, and maybe the next move is a trade of Juan Soto, who is projected to make some $30 million in arbitration. Padres, definitely a team to watch how they put this all back together. The Orioles. Now, the Orioles are a team that had a great season, but they, as I've said numerous times, need to spend some money. It's time. And I know their owner, John Angelos, hasn't done that before. Their general manager, Mike Elias, hasn't done it either. But they're in a position now where they can be one of the leading contenders in the American League next season, just as they were this season, but they need some veteran starting pitching help. They need to get one of those guys on that list that we just had up there before. 2, ideally, though I don't expect them to do that. The other thing they could do is trade 1 or more of their prospects for a starting pitcher as well. They have the ability, as I've said numerous times, to do whatever they want. All right, the final 2 teams, the Cubs. Now, the Cubs are in an interesting spot here. They just lost Stroman, which I don't know that they expected to lose. He gave them $21 million of financial flexibility by opting out. They picked up the option on Kyle Hendricks, picked up the option on Yan Gomes. They are a team that seems ready to win. I would expect they reinvest that $21 million in their pursuit of starting pitching. They're obviously going to need to address either the loss of Bellinger or re-sign him, one or the other. And then finally, the Giants. Now, the Giants are a team that just hired a new manager, Bob Melvin. They are a team that has been seeking a star centerpiece for years now. Goes back to trying to get Giancarlo Stanton before he went to the Yankees. Goes all the way back to that. And yet they have not succeeded. Bob Melvin has had good relationships with Japanese players in the past. I imagine that would help in a pursuit of Ohtani. But it remains to be seen whether the Giants can pull it off in free agency. If they can't, they've got young talent now. And they've got a president of baseball operations, Farhan Zaidi, who recognizes that he needs to do things a little bit differently. So a trade for a star should not be out of the question for the Giants. A run at Ohtani, it's certainly not out of the question. And it could come down to Giants and Dodgers and others for the great Japanese two-way star.